About 50% of adults in the United States are trying to lose weight. That is according to a survey by the CDC that was published in 2018, and that also states that almost 40% of Americans had obesity between 2015 and 2016. And with the trend in obesity generally going up, it is very likely that that number will be even higher in the next couple of years. And in part, that is because most people simply don't know how to diet correctly to reach their end goal and to maintain it over the long term. And so in this video, I'll be going over 7 of the most common diet mistakes people make when trying to lose weight and body fat. I'll also be sharing some additional tips that I personally think are useful and will hopefully help you reach your goals. So let's get started with mistake number 1, which is being in too big of a deficit. Now, you will lose weight quickly that way. But the goal of dieting isn't just to lose weight, it's to lose mainly body fat. And if you're in a huge deficit, then sure, you will lose some body fat, but you'll also be losing some of your hard-earned muscle mass. And you could potentially end up looking worse after your diet than you did before you started your diet. And in addition, you'll also be very low in energy, so your training performance as well as your performance at work or at school will definitely go down. You might experience higher levels of hunger and cravings, you might experience mood swings or be sleep deprived, and just feel a lot more miserable in general. And that could result in you cheating on your diet, or if you don't end up cheating on your diet, then the chances of you rebounding after the diet is over definitely go up that way. So instead, you want to be in a more moderate deficit that will result in you losing about 0.5% to 1% of your body weight per week on average. And that will make sure that you still have enough energy to train, and will also make the process of dieting a lot more enjoyable. The next mistake is having a very rigid mindset. And what I mean by that is when people approach their diet from a very black and white perspective, and they'll think of either foods or even their behaviors as being good or bad. So you'll often hear people say something like, "I was bad this weekend," when they're describing that they went over their calories. And there are studies that suggest that people with a very rigid mindset tend to do less well at losing weight and keeping it off, and that they're also more food focused and are more susceptible to binge eating. So you want to avoid thinking in black and white terms and think of your diet as being more of a continuum. So if you have a meal plan and you can't follow it exactly, or if you track your calories and you're slightly over your calories one day, then there's no reason to freak out over it. First of all, there aren't any foods that you have to eat to lose weight. And if you're tracking your calories and you're slightly over, then just reduce your calories a little bit the next day and you should be fine. You're obviously going to have some degree of restraint, otherwise you're never going to be successful and you're never going to reach the physique that you want. But there's a difference between having a very rigid and a very flexible mindset. With the flexible mindset, you would say, I can have some chocolate each day as long as it fits into my calories and I'm able to hit my protein target. Whereas with the very rigid mindset, you would view chocolate as a bad food. So you'd say, chocolate is a bad food, I'm not allowed to eat it. And if you do eat it, then it just ends up being this massive binge and you go completely overboard. So rather than having a very exclusive mindset and thinking about what foods you can't have, try having a more inclusive mindset and think about what foods you should be eating more of. So that would be your lean proteins, your fibrous vegetables, fruits and whole grains. And if you eat more of them, then by default, you will probably eat less of those calorie-dense foods, and it will make it a lot easier for you to stick to your diet. People that are more flexible and have less of this black and white mindset tend to have a healthier relationship with food and with their body, and tend to be more successful at losing weight and keeping it off. The third mistake is actually not being in a calorie deficit. And this sounds ridiculous, but studies have shown that the average fat loss dieter, so someone who's slightly overweight, vastly overestimates how many calories he's burning through physical activity and vastly underestimates how many calories he's consuming. So there was one study that showed that people that thought they were diet resistant overestimated their physical activity by 51% and underestimated how many calories they were consuming by 47%. And underestimating your calorie intake can happen due to not tracking your food intake correctly or not accounting for snacks or other hidden items that contain calories. For instance, if you're cooking your food in oil and you're not accounting for the oil, or if you're just eyeballing your food instead of actually weighing and measuring it, or if you're eating while you're distracted, maybe in front of a TV or while you're working, which has all been shown to make it a lot harder for people to recall how much food they actually ate. And so if you are tracking your calories, then you want to make sure that you are tracking everything that you eat, at least at first when you're not very skilled at it. And then I'd also suggest that you have fixed meal times and that you only eat at those meal times and avoid eating anything outside of it. So that will just avoid all these little snacks to slowly creep up and prevent you from being in a calorie deficit. Mistake number 4 is having excessive cheat meals or even cheat days. And this is pretty common for people. They will follow their diet from Monday to Friday, and then they will want to treat themselves with a cheat meal or even 2 cheat days on the weekend. And the problem with this approach is A, it can create super unhealthy relationships with food and potentially even eating disorders. And B, if you go completely overboard, then there is a good chance that you will completely erase your calorie deficit over the week and not lose any body fat at all. So let's say you're in a 400 calorie deficit from Monday to Friday, but then on the weekend you go over your maintenance by 1,000 calories each day. Then you've completely erased your calorie deficit and you're not going to lose any body fat at all. And that is actually super common because most foods that people are eating when they're doing their cheat meals or cheat days are very calorie dense and very tasty, and so it's super easy to overeat them. A better alternative would be to have refeeds on the weekend, so during the week you're in a calorie deficit, and then at the weekend you raise your calories to maintenance. And you could either do that by having a little treat, or even better, you would still eat the same food that you were eating during the week, but just simply increase the portion sizes. This can give you a psychological break from dieting and let you have a nice meal, but still keep you on track for your fat loss. And then ultimately you're going to have to accept that you're going to have some discipline, and that you're going to be uncomfortable at times, but that nothing in life that is worthwhile comes easy without you having to put the work into it. Mistake number 5 is looking for the magic bullet. And this is where people will try all kinds of fad diets and quick fixes like juice cleanses in order to improve their physique in a short amount of time. And this comes in waves. At first it was fats are bad, then it was carbs are bad, but fats are great, and you need to be putting butter in your coffee. Then the vegan diet became very popular. Now it's a carnivore diet, and the list just goes on and on. Some people will tell you you need to eat 6 times a day, every 2 hours, in order to speed up your metabolism. Others will tell you that intermittent fasting is the best way to lose body fat. And really, these all can be tools in a toolbox. At the end of the day, it just comes down to being in a calorie deficit and following a diet that you can adhere to for a longer period of time. So you don't need to restrict yourself to any particular diet. You can just simply choose different aspects that fit into your lifestyle and that you enjoy to help you build a sustainable diet. Mistake number 6 is to not be resistance training and not eating enough protein. So like I talked about earlier, the goal of dieting isn't just to lose body weight, it's to actually lose body fat. But from an evolutionary standpoint, our body wants to hold on to that body fat because that is what will actually keep us alive if for some reason we wouldn't have any access to food anymore. Our body doesn't know that at any time we can just go to the supermarket or to a restaurant to get food. So we'll try to hold on to body fat. And so if you're in a calorie deficit, but you're not resistance training and you're only eating a small amount of protein, then your body won't just lose body fat, but it'll also lose a substantial amount of lean mass as well. And so you want to make sure that you're resistance training at least twice a week, training all your large muscle groups and focusing on the principle of progressive overload. And in terms of protein intake, research suggests that for optimal gains, you want to have at least 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. And that could potentially be even a little bit higher if you're on a diet. But if you're someone who doesn't need a lot of protein at the moment, then I would just focus on having a decent serving of protein with each meal and maybe a protein shake after your training, and that would be a great start already. And then probably the biggest mistake people make when dieting is to not have a post-diet plan in place. So they'll reach their goal by whatever method they choose, but then once the diet is over, they won't know what to do to maintain it. And so you need to realize that you need to have some kind of system in place to make sure that you don't undo all your hard work. I went over what to do after you've finished your diet in my last video, so just click on the screen here if you want to learn more about that. So that's it for this one, guys. Let me know in the comments if you think there are any other mistakes people commonly make when dieting. Also make sure you like this video, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next video.